Next up we have Charles Otway. He grew up on a farm in Pemberton and has dedicated himself to the study and practice of permaculture as a holistic solution to environmental, food, and societal challenges. Since 2010, he has been working to rebuild the Permaculture Association of WA. He will speak on the People's Food Plan, which is a document that provides a permaculture synonymous alternative to the government corporate version of food production and farming. Charles is an Aries, and I heard that he recently bought his wife a souped up smartphone. Please join me in welcoming Charles.
Thank you. I vowed never to use an Apple Mac, so things are not going to plan, but that's all right. Which button? That one. Beautiful. So I've spent a lot of time with Permaculture West in Perth, and one of the things we did, I think it was last year or early the previous year, was to do a bit of work on the People's Food Plan, and we actually presented. The government asked for submissions on its Australian Food Plan, which was the government's U-Butte solution to dealing with degraded farmland and problems with agricultural production. So they produced a food plan because everyone's getting concerned about food security around the world at the moment. So their answer was this food plan. Sadly, it missed the mark very badly, and it was really about making sure that the big corporate entities were still making lots of money out of food growing and food selling in Australia, and they were concentrating on exporting lots of stuff and really not looking at the root of the cause of farming problems in Australia and Western Australia. So the group, the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, it initiated a People's Food Plan, and they called it the People's Food Plan because obviously they consulted with a lot of people, groups like Permaculture West and Food Connect and a bunch of people over east, and they started talking to the farmers as well, which I think the government forgot to do when it was producing its People's Food Plan. So food sovereignty is really what it's all about. We're trying to have people have access to food that is safe and healthy, and have the safety in knowing they have a food supply available to them. So behind a lot of this People's Food Plans and those kind of words is the sovereignty idea. We want to be in charge of our food supply, we want to have a safe food supply, and we want that to be for the people rather than for corporate money-making purposes. So in July 2012, the Alliance put together its People's Food Plan in response to the federal National Food Plan, and it was in contrast to the government's document because it was looking to be inclusive and democratic and canvass all the people. So the people eating the food, the people growing the food, people in that sort of delivery mechanisms as well. And what's at the bottom in white, which is very hard to see, is interestingly, there's been a change of government, and as political whim changes all the time, the National Food Plan is pretty much scrapped. It's not officially scrapped, but they've removed all the staff from the department that was working on it. So that kind of gives you an idea of how those things are going. So that won't progress. But thankfully, the People's Food Plan is being converted into a openly available wiki online. So we can continue to develop an outline of how we would like our food to be produced and how we would like our farmers to be treated and how we would like fair trade mechanisms to work. So I'll close on that as well, but I encourage you to get involved because it is a community collaboration now, which is great. We're looking to create the food plan as opposed to the people's food plan as opposed to the corporate food plan. Now, you can easily sort of think that these huge corporations are far too powerful and they will get their way. But as a little cartoon says there, you know, if you're organised and if we have talks like this and we get a groundswell and people are unhappy and vote with their wallets on how they eat and what they choose, it's very easy to have corporate influence. You know, it's pretending that you don't, you're the one sticking your head in the sand. Why do we need a food plan? Well, we can't continue to go the way we have been going. Food production is based on sort of oil and exploitation of the natural resources of the soil, if you like, the water and the carbon in the soil. So you can't do that forever. Many of the big civilizations crumbled because they exhausted their local soil supplies and then they couldn't live there. So we're sort of heading that way too. So we need to move from a broad-scale, mechanised, monocropping type farming system to a smaller scale, low-impact system that is supporting families and supporting small rural ventures. We really need to be targeting that kind of thing. And as I said, the food plan, the national one that the government came up with, was just more of the same. It was about sort of seizing the moment and exporting all our water and food overseas and making lots of money out of it, rather than realising that we're in a very fragile environment, and a very fragile time, and we should be looking to conserve and make sure we're making the best decisions for our land and our farmers. I like this demographic in this picture. Two things really catch my eye on it. In 2011, so 2 years ago, 47% of our farmers were over the age of 55. So it's probably like 50% over the age of 55 now, which, you know, you can farm until you get older, but if you don't have a handover plan, that's a big concern. So not only are farmers walking off the land because they can't make a profit anymore, they're ageing very fast and they have no succession plans. And, you know, and the small print up there is, it now takes, a farmer needs to produce 4 times as much produce in real terms to get half as much money as he did in 1950s. So, you know, they really are being stretched. You know, another concerning thing, and probably you hear about a lot more with Indian farmers and Monsanto's involvement and a lot of commercial agricultural control, but the suicide rate in farmers is much higher than other areas. You're talking 24% compared to 10% in similar working jobs, if you know what I mean. So it's a high pressure job, they're not making any money, so it's not a great surprise that they're not sticking around on the farms. So the People's Food Plan is to try and educate the public as much as anything on the need to support farmers, to understand the real cost of food and to understand what real food is about again, instead of just going to the shops. A great quote there. My grandfather used to say that once in your life you need a doctor, a lawyer, a policeman and a preacher, but every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer. So we don't think about it, but that's the reality of it all. If you eat, you need a farmer to produce some food for you. So, you know, one of the main aims of this People's Food Plan was to support our food producers and to allow them to have a viable, sustainable living from the farm. And to create participatory urban agriculture. So again, it's this re-education, this people being involved in where their food comes from. So you need to get to know your farmer, you need to know where you're sourcing your food from. And the nasty noise. Re-educating people in the real cost of food. And in third world countries, they're looking at spending 40 and 50% of their income on food. In the third world, it's 5 to 10%. So it's a huge difference. And when food prices change, it affects the third world a lot more than us. So we need to start valuing real food, we need to start valuing farmers, and we need to spend an appropriate amount of money on that. you could go back to that. I'll put the slides up on our website. But really, we're looking at fair trade rather than free trade. Free trade doesn't really help anyone. It just allows corporations to go and source their product at the lowest possible dollar and the highest profit to them. So we're looking to, you know, the food plan is looking at a fair trade model rather than a free trade model. A quarter of the food the developed world wastes would feed the third world. So, I mean, just let that sink in and then wonder why we've got companies looking for genetically modified unknown solutions to feed the starving. You know, we just have to stop wasting all our food and we could feed them. Yeah. It's a much more sensible solution. Something that most of you will be aware, but a way to sort of start this process to empower you all, you should be looking at sourcing from farmers markets and getting a relationship between the farmer and the customer. Farm gate, now there's not much of that in Western Australia, but you can certainly have pick your own farms and cellar door sales and all that kind of stuff, which puts you in contact with the farmer or the primary producer. There's things like seasonal food box deliveries and co-ops that do food box deliveries. So you're sourcing directly from Bridgetown and Boyartbrook and places like that, seasonal produce. You can join local groups and community gardens and food swaps. And there's the north of the river food co-op, and I think there's a couple of other food co-ops in Perth. So if you look for food co-ops, there are some in Perth, and that's a buying group that's organised by the people, gets a reasonable discount, they can source directly, and it's owned by the members, if you like. So there's no profiteering, no middlemen, no rubbish. And little organic stores and places like that are normally worth supporting. Some of the other items, you know, they're looking for food labelling so we can actually make a choice. So we can vote with our wallet appropriately. I'm lecturing you about voting with your wallet, but we don't have food labelling that works in Australia, so it's pretty hard to do it. Re-educate the people, spread food democracy, and you know, there's a little bit of allowing Indigenous people to have access to their food and their land again when you're talking about a food plan. Some great infographics and things in the People's Food Plan, so I sort of advise you to go to the website and have a look at their full plan. It's like a 40-page document, so there's heaps in there to guide us. A really great quote from Joel Sullivan. You know, don't you think it's odd that people spend all that time looking for their mechanic and their contractors for their house, but they have no idea where their food comes from? You're putting that food in yourself. So our food system is a product of your wallet. You're in control, so take ownership and make the changes yourself. And it's only when the last river is died and the last tree's died and the river's poisoned and the fish have been caught that we will realise that we can't eat money. Thanks for your time.